Welcome back to Legitimate Targets, everybody. I hope you're all having a great day. I've got a very special guest joining me for today's episode. We're going to discuss how Finland is heating up as the possible next fracture that the U.S. will hope to employ against Russia. They already are doing it, but it could get a lot worse. It could get very, very deadly and dangerous. And Finland holds the largest EU border with Russia. So there's an obvious reason why they want to do this. Joining me on today's episode is Dr. Tuomas Malinen. He is an associate professor of economics at the University of Helsinki, and he's the CEO of GNS Economics, which focuses on macroeconomics and these sorts of trends, which we also spend a lot of time covering on this show. But Doctor, thank you so much for joining me today. How's it going in Finland right now?
Thank you. Nice to be here. It's when I look outside, it's a very like Octoberish weather, little rain, clouds, about 10 degrees centigrade. So that in that retrospect, it's just okay. But of course, when we look a bit deeper, it's Finland is not doing very well. We had a massive unemployment print on July. 12% is the worst we have had since our own Great Depression in the beginning of the 1990s. And even the seasonally adjusted quarterly unemployment rate is 10%. And it's always like hilarious when the anti-Russian pundits also here are calling the implosion of the Russian economy, which is basically full employed and the economy growing. We have stalled, and our unemployment is growing, and poverty also. So the narrative thing doesn't really work in Finland, so to speak, but. Then there are the dangers lurking in the background. If we look at the speeches our president has given, President Alexander Stubb, there's a risk that Finland is being planned as the next Ukraine, and many actually have started to suspect that. I think I proposed such a drastic development or scenario maybe a year and a half ago, but now people are starting to wake up to the threat of war in Nordics, and I think it has recently become emphasized because Poland has been turning away from this war rhetoric, and now possibly also Czech Republic. So. Who are left? The Baltics and Finland. Mm-hmm. But yeah, in short, it's not so great here now.
It seems like everything that is within the EU's control, within Brussels' control to manipulate, is only heading in one direction, and that's towards war with Russia. Whether it's Romania or Moldova, we saw this week, or obviously Finland, Poland, and was it the Czech Republic that had that upset victory in the parliament?
Yeah.
So these things are happening kind of under the radar, it seems like, but everything else is going in one direction. It's war with Russia. What are the big plans for Finland in your view that could potentially lead to something like that?
Well, there has been a preparation ongoing for quite some time. About a year ago, our mainstream media changed the narrative from that the war is far to war is close. They even published pieces where they explain where Finns should find shelter when the war comes, which was quite drastic. I haven't seen such headlines or pieces in our newspapers, well, forever. And then there are whispers. For example, I have few contacts to the Finnish Defense Forces, and already 2 years ago, after we joined NATO, I got messages that they are preparing for a war. And then there's a massive buildup going, especially among we have like two major, well, several actually Air Force bases, but the most major ones are in Rovaniemi and in Jyväskylä. And they are under heavy buildup, and it's kind of secretive. We don't really know what's happening, but what I heard from Jyväskylä, for example, is that the runway is being extended to a length that the base can the U.S. strategic bombers can land there. And this is quite massive. Of course, this is a rumor. No one, tells it out front what's going to happen. But when you look around, you see the preparation ongoing. And just today, we had a air siren or warning test, and I hadn't heard those for quite some time. So they have now come back. I remember those from my childhood, from the 1980s, 1990s, and now they are suddenly back. So, yeah, there are these, let's say, hints which are getting louder and louder, basically showing us that we might be heading to a conflict with Russia, which would, of course, be completely insane. But, yeah, that's how it looks.
How has Finland been impacted by this warmongering, this Russophobia? I'm sure the border towns in particular were hit very hard by this. But as a whole, how has Finland fared as a country that shares so much of its border with Russia?
Well, we have, managed. We have pushed through, would be the word or the way to describe it. It's when they closed the border and ended the trade, we had some very serious issues, for example, with our energy security, because we had a lot of electricity coming from Russia. We had peat, which is the main form of heat source in Central European, Central Finnish towns and cities. And then there was a massive Eastern trade with Russia, and these all went away, and so it's actually there is some kind of a cover up that has been going on. The government has been pushing money to the eastern regions of Finland to make them appear better than they are. But we know that there has been a massive collapse in for example, real estate in Imatra, which is one of the towns or cities right next to the Russian border. I heard that the housing prices have collapsed by 60%. Because the Russian money left, and we had also American European businessmen living in these towns and then traveling to Russia for work, and it's been a mess. And Finland has been hit hard by these sanctions.
Mm-hmm. When you look at the possibility of war with Russia being used as this proxy like Ukraine is, are average Finnish people, are they worried about this? Are they concerned about this in the slightest? Is this on their minds? And do you think that they're already preconditioned as a whole to support something like this? Or would people be weary about the idea of sending their sons, their daughters across the border to go fight?
Well, I think most of Finns don't want to look that way yet, but many also do, and I would say that the objection is growing. People they feel, many feel great sympathy towards Ukraine because of our history and because of the massive war propaganda here, but people do not feel the need to go to a war against Russia. With whom we have been, friends for several decades already, and we have a large Russian-speaking minority populace here in Finland too. I know several, and it just it doesn't feel that Finns would be ready for a war in real terms. Would they accept it if it comes? I don't know. That's a tricky question, but I see something of opposition rising here. But the main problem we have here is that our political class is I think it's completely corrupted. It has probably been taken over by the US deep state or something. An American professor told me when we joined NATO, and then when we signed the DCA, which is the Defense Cooperation Agreement, he told me that he asked me that do Finns understand that when a foreign country sends troops to your soil, your domestic policy becomes the foreign policy of that country? And I said they did not understand. So it's just like when the DCA was agreed in our parliament, it was a unanimous decision, completely unheard of. I don't even remember when our parliament was in unison on something. And this was about accepting troops of a foreign country to our nation. And there was not there was a single objection which received no support. So basically, all the members of the 200-person parliament of Finland supported the notion. This is completely unheard of. Everybody looking at it should observe and say that something is seriously off in our political system. Like, let's say 10 years ago, I looked at Russia and said, well, they have an authoritarian system. They have no democracy. Now I look at Russia and say that, well, at least they know who is controlling them. We don't at this point. And that's kind of, that's a thing that is slowly eating into the hearts of minds of Finns, that we have lost our country to something which we cannot name, which we don't know. So I think that's the biggest problem here now, is that there is a massive gap between the will of the people and what our leaders do. Mm-hmm. So I haven't found a single person to whom I'm speaking to live, in the flesh, who would have said that, okay, it's good that the Finnish president is attacking Russia. Not a single person. In social media, there are of course these pundits and all that, but there is this massive gap between what people want and what our political class is currently doing. So, in a way, Finland has been hijacked by someone. We don't know exactly why, but it came with NATO, that's for sure.
Well, the U.S. Warhawks are definitely very happy about the accession, and they're enthralled with this idea of.
Oh, well, let me stop you there. Do you know what was the day that Finland was ascended to as a full member of NATO?
No.
It was the 9th of April. 2023, when the original treaty of the North Atlantic Alliance was signed on the 9th of April 1949. This is no coincidence. These things don't happen in as a coincidental matter. So I'm thinking that it was a signal. It was a signal that NATO is now ready to do its original purpose or something. But it most definitely was no coincidence that it was the same day than the original treaty was signed. Sorry to interrupt you, but I had to mention.
No, it's darkly poetic, is what it is. It's when in Finland you have mandatory service, right, for young men, and women.
Yeah, not women.
No women.
I've served as a undersergeant group leader of armored engineer company. I have watched people lay mines, basically.
I had a friend my age who he's in goes to university in the US right now, but he was telling me about it, and he told me some stories about his time doing that. That's basically what he did on the border, patrolled the border and the tanks and whatnot. And I don't know, I've never served in a military, but the stories I got from him, uh, it kind of gave me the impression that this is not maybe a military that would be up to the task of fighting against the Russians, especially after the past several years of sharpening their knife in Ukraine. Um, how do you think the Finnish defense forces, how would they stand up against something like Russia? Also, with taking into account, I guess, military spending and defense technologies that they have or don't have.
Well, I would say that 5 years prior, like 5 years before, I would say that Finnish army would have given the Russian army the run for its money, or fight for its money, basically. So because we were very well trained, and the whole idea of this mandatory military service is deterrence.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, wherever you go in Finland, there are people who have received men who have received the training, can shoot, are trying to shoot and kill, basically. So it has been a deterrent, a very good one. But now with the drone warfare, I would say that we don't stand a chance at the current time, just because Russia has been fighting the war in Ukraine now for 3.5 years, and we have done nothing. And most importantly, I don't see Russia wasting men to Finland. That if war would come, Finland would be decapitated by missiles. I'm rather certain of that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I don't think any NATO army is currently prepared to fight Russia because of the drone warfare has gone. It has developed so fast. It's just like I remember 2 weeks ago, I think I saw it was a former U.S. retired U.S. not a general colonel or something like that, who said that his unit, some special unit, it wasn't the Green Beret, it was someone else. They couldn't stand was it 5 hours in the Ukrainian front because they couldn't handle the drones and all that. It was a very outspoken comment of where we are now what comes to the modern warfare.
Yeah, I've watched some videos on the drone techs and the boutique drone stores and manufacturers, and it's really crazy. Both sides are very capable and advanced in what they're producing, and they've set themselves apart. What did you make of President Trump's interaction with President Stubb the other, it was a few weeks ago or something, when he went to the White House and seemingly didn't know who he was, what his role was? It's quite something.
Yeah, it was, and it was embarrassing. Actually, many of us Finns thought that what is he doing there? But then Pascal, basically, as you hinted, I was there a few weeks ago. He presented this theory that why would a president of a small country not in any way engage to the war or anything that relates to it be invited to a White House, though this meeting with the coalition of the willing, or as I call it, the European Coalition for War. But why was he there? And Pascal said that maybe it was a passing of the torch from Zelensky to Alexander Stubb. And presenting him to Donald Trump, that he will continue to carry the torch for the war against Russia. That was Pascal's thought, and my thought was that Stubb has been selected as a kind of de facto leader of the European Coalition for War. That's the other option, but of course these come together very easily. So, but there was something seriously off with President Stubb being there, and I think the indications of it are not positive for our country or for Europe in general, for that matter, because for since 44 till 2023, Finland was beacon of stability as a neutral country in the north. We were guarantors of, peace in all of Europe, basically, because because we had a very good relationship with Russia. So Russia has it's a massive country, so she has threats all over, but we kept the western border in check. There was no threat, no nothing. And if you look at history, several incursions to Russia have, of course, come from the West. Napoleon, Hitler, and we even took part of that, the Operation Barbarossa. Although our history is written in such a way that it was what was the word? It's an individual war. We didn't take part of the Operation Barbarossa. We just happened to attack Russia 3 days after the Operation Barbarossa began, with massive amount of German troops in northern Finland. Of course, we did not take part. We had nothing to do with it. It just happened. No, but yeah. So, but Finland, after the Second World War, we played a very important role as a neutral country. So. And now it's gone, and I fear that they are going to turn us the 180, the completely opposite direction. So we will become a threat to Finland, to Russia. I mean, so yeah, and I also have to mention this: when we were ascended to NATO, we even had a short public discussion with then Prime Minister Sanna Marin and then President Sauli Niinistö, that should Finland try to acquire nuclear weapons, and I was one of the people explaining to them the very basics of nuclear deterrence. If you have nuclear weapons, you can shoot out from a rocket or on an artillery cell. Basically, you are just 200 kilometers from St. Petersburg. There is no way Russia would allow Finland to have nuclear weapons in its border. It's just Cuban Missile Crisis stuff. So we were completely lost at sea what comes to the the whole idea of how these geopolitics occur between the nuclear superpowers. But we also had that discussion here.
Are there any there? So you mentioned the 100% votes in favor of accession, but are there any main?
No, the DCA. I think the NATO accession, we had something like 95 or 96% support for NATO, but 95. The DCA. Yeah, but the DCA, the Defense Cooperation Agreement with the US, that went through with 100% support.
So 95%, does that mean that there's one party or multiple parties in Finland that are going against the grain and trying to find that stability that Finland once had, or were those just like non-votes or something?
There were non-votes and individual members of parliament. There is no peace party in Finland anymore. That's the most insane thing. How cannot we have a peace movement here? How can this NATO and the DCA, how can there be such a massive support within the parliament when if you would have gone to talk people and have a referendum, we would probably still have went into NATO, but I don't see the support being more than 60%. Mm-hmm. So how can it be 95% in the parliament? And this is the thing. This is a truly gruesome example of how political elite has taken over a country, and that country is Finland. When you grow up in Finland, you are being told that we are the least corrupted country. We have free press, and then in 5 years after Corona coming to this point, you notice that everything is a lie. And it's such a massive lie that it takes some time still for Finns to understand it in a wider sense. But it's there is that process is ongoing. I just hope it's fast enough to prevent the war, for example.
Mm-hmm. I'll ask you one last question about the future. Jan Stoltenberg, before he left his position as the Secretary General Chief of NATO, he was saying it was so weird. It was like right when Trump was before he was inaugurated as president. I think it was in December or January. He said something like, "Oh, just wait 5 years and things are going to get really crazy." I'm paraphrasing. He said something to that effect in an interview when talking about the European security context, and kind of made me feel like everyone's just waiting around for Trump to leave, and then they're going to go full overboard against Russia. You also have France and some other countries who are putting out these emergency messages at their hospitals talking about mass casualty events. Mm-hmm. Very weird stuff. And there's much more to, you could go down the rabbit hole in. But do you think that that's kind of the end goal here is make Trump waffle around for the next 3 or so years? And then when he, eventually is, out of the White House, they'll have free reign to do whatever they want.
I think they're in a kind of damage limitation mode now. Trump is trying to fix things, I'm sure, but they are trying to stop him from doing any of that. And they hope to get him to, well, not directly, but indirectly support the motion of a greater war down the line. So, and I made several public pleas to President Trump that one thing that threatens the European and the world security the most are the U.S. troops stationed on Finnish soil. So I'm not an expert in DCA, but I'm sure that he can nullify the deal and withdraw all U.S. troops from Finnish soil. That would be the most crucial thing, because it's very likely that if the next round starts from somewhere, it starts from here. And what comes to Ukraine, this is also I've even written to the White House one time explaining that you cannot have peace under Zelensky. President Zelensky cannot even make peace, because it would probably get him killed because of the fascist faction controlling Ukrainian politics. And he has become so corrupted that if all the corruption would come, to the public eye, I think the Ukrainians would simply execute him. So he needs to remove Zelensky from power to get peace in Ukraine, and then withdraw all troops, not just the Baltic states, but also from Finland. So now he has been talking only about how retreating the U.S. forces or U.S. military support from the Baltic states, but he needs to do the same to Finland. That's essential. Finland needs to become a neutral country within NATO. That's crucial. If we do not get that, the likelihood that there will be another European war after Trump leaves office is high, in my opinion.
God willing, we see that day come. I don't know. I think the U.S. They don't like to lose things after they gain them, whether it's surveillance powers or war powers or whatever it is. But hopefully it comes. So, Dr. Malinen, thank you so much for joining me today. Do you want to shout out anywhere where people can follow you along on Twitter or YouTube or anything like that?
Yeah, well, GNS Economics, you just Google GNS Economics newsletter is the main source. We do macroeconomic, but also geopolitical analysis. And then there's my own newsletter, Tuomas Malinen on geopolitics and the economy. And of course, I can be easily found through X, at least for now, unless I get banned. But, but still, yeah. The Substacks of GNS Economics and myself, they are great sources if you want to understand what's happening in Europe.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Thanks.